Leader of the third party.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. For many years, health experts and advocates, all parties committees of this House and former members of this caucus have been calling for a comprehensive overhaul of BC's Mental Health Act. This outdated legislation has been criticized for violating human rights and failing to address mental health and substance use disorders with evidence and compassion. Last week, this Premier promised to at last overhaul the Act. So far, we haven't heard a plan for what this process will look like. Through you, Honourable Speaker, to the Premier, when you committed to reviewing BC's Mental Health Act, how did you envision this work would be undertaken and completed?
Minister of Health.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker, and thank you to the member for the question. And I can't begin this answer without just acknowledging again some of the circumstances that have brought us to this place and the devastating and horrific tragedy that our province experienced at the Lapu Lapu Festival. And our focus right now continues to be making sure that we're doing everything that we can to ensure that people are receiving the right supports. And I know that people want action, Mr. Speaker, and I completely agree. That's why our actions will continue to be around building out the continuum of care that people need to find the supports they need for their mental health, and, Mr. Speaker, initiating a review and a modernization of the Mental Health Act. Mr. Speaker, I've directed my staff to come back to me with the options that I need to consider about how we are going to undertake that review and that modernization. This is not a small piece of work. I take this incredibly seriously. I recognize the urgency, but I also recognize the importance of doing it right. So when we know more about that scope and timeline, I'll have a lot more to say to this House, and I look forward to the participation and collaboration with all members of this House in this incredibly important piece of work. Thank you.
Leader of the third party supplemental. Thank
you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you to the Minister. I'm heartened to hear that this can be a multi-partisan effort. As we know, BC's Mental Health Act was passed in 1964 and hasn't been substantially updated since the 90s. This outdated legislation was created in a time where mental health challenges were treated as moral failings, where the appropriate response was deemed to be punishment, coercion, forced medication, and electroconvulsive therapy. 60 years after the Act first passed, 30 years since it was substantially reviewed, our world and understanding of mental health, we can all agree, has changed dramatically. This legislative overhaul must not repeat the mistakes of the past. How will the Premier ensure that people with lived and living experience are at the centre of this work to ensure BC's new Mental Health Act doesn't cause more harm than good?
Minister.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker, and thank you again to the member for the question. And I agree completely that it is so important to have the experience of people with lived and living experience as part of this work, just as it will be equally important to work with First Nations. And of course, any review of an act like this must be done under our obligations that we've made under the Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act. Mr. Speaker, that's why it's important that we take this work deliberately, carefully, and thoughtfully. That is my commitment to this House to do that. I recognize the urgency with which people want to see action when it comes to mental health and continuing to build out the continuum of supports. And my commitment is to continue to do just that, Mr. Speaker, whether it's bolstering the education that we're doing with children and youth, adding more foundry centres for youth to be able to access, providing counselling supports for people at free or low cost. Mr. Speaker, we know that thousands and thousands of people have accessed those supports. I'm also quite heartened to have this discussion here today because I recognize that it is Mental Health Week from May 5th to May 12th, and I encourage all MLAs, all members of this House to be active participants in their communities, talking to people about reducing the stigma, in talking about the challenges that people face, and that we all continue to work on this together. Thank you.